Cash here, welcome back. Thank you very much for joining me. Today I'm going to do transition pictures for Fred Rogers. He was on American television for 33 years doing a preschool children's show, which was just incredibly influential. Americans have the most amazing soft spot for Mr. Rogers, and many of you asked for his pictures. I knew almost nothing about him. I've seen clips of his show and it seemed a little weird to me, but the affection for him is huge. So much so that in his lifetime he was awarded 40 honorary degrees as well as the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And he testified before Congress in 1969. That much I do know. A certain amount of money had been allotted by President Lyndon Johnson to setting up PBS, basically public television in America. And Richard Nixon, when he came along, wanted to take that away. So Fred Rogers appeared in Congress to give testimony, and it's one of the most powerful pieces of testimony that have ever been given before Congress. It's almost impossible to watch it and not cry. Very powerful. As well as his TV work, he was a Presbyterian minister. He went to theological seminary and became an ordained minister. Although he was also interested in Judaism and mysticism and Buddhism and so on. In the end, he died of stomach cancer. So immediately, this sent me to Messages from the Body. You know, the book that links physical illness to its psychological causes? It says about cancer: there have been many years of inner conflict, guilt, hurt, grief, despair, resentment, confusion, and/or tension surrounding their deepest personal issues. They have disharmonious attitudes towards parts of themselves that they don't want to deal with. They are consciously very loving, supportive, and kind, but they repress their personal feelings in a long-suffering, low self-esteem pattern. They give too much. They carry all the problems and never complain, believing that they deserve this fate. They seek to ignore their inner pain by attending continuously to others' needs. Isn't that interesting? But it's good that I knew very little about him. Because when I went into the pictures, into the energy, he was lying on the floor, clutching his stomach, which is so interesting. And I went over and I said, "Where's your faith? Where's your trust in the process?" And he just lay there. I said, "Where's your faith? Come on." And there was a slow realization that what he was clutching onto didn't hurt. And he goes, "Oh, that's it. I'm here. It's over." Was really surprised, like, I don't hurt. My body's free. There were several different stages to his process. There was surprise, first of all, but there was also cognitive dissonance. As happens with many people who spent their lives exploring religion, spirituality, any particular meta-narrative, they think they know what they're going to get when they transition. And when it differs from what they've been told, it shakes them a little bit. And he was genuinely surprised at first that he didn't hurt, that it was over, and then confused that what he'd expected didn't materialize. And I've seen that a lot with religious people. Once he'd assimilated, he was very keen to get on with it. It was like, okay, we got it. Let's do this now. What's next? It was almost like he was 25 again. He had a certain spirit to him, a certain energy, driven by this need to know, inquisitiveness, which would reflect very much what he was like in life. And he went off up the tunnel that I always see, left me behind. I just saw him go. It's like, whoa, he really is keen, this guy. He was limber, he was enthusiastic, he was curious, and he just went. But the thing about him was that he was very prone to stating the obvious as he went. He observed things and commented like, wow, this tunnel's a little steep. Wow, the ceiling's a little low. Wow, where is this leading? Constant snippets of commentary about the process, like he was talking to himself. When he came into the cave area, the bit that I see where the light always is in these pictures, he was genuinely impressed. It was like, oh wow, this is it. This is where the doorway to heaven is. This is where I go to meet God. You know, I need time for this. I need to take this in. And he walked around a little bit, and then he sat down, which I've not seen anybody else do, and looked like a small child. It was just like, whoa, the light. This is the place. This is where it ends. He wanted to go back and tell people. His urge was not to go through and serve his own soul, his own consciousness, but to go back and tell people what he'd seen, to make them feel better about this process. That's what he had the urge to do. It was selfless, like it says in Messages from the Body. That was his goal, was to enlighten other people, make them feel good, even if it meant sacrificing his own passage into eternity. But it was obvious to him that he couldn't go back, and it was frustrating to him that he couldn't explain it to anybody. It was such a convoluted mass of emotions, from gratitude, that it was a smooth transition maybe, to excitement that he was about to find the answer to the secret. The mystery was about to be solved. To wonder and awe at the very idea that God, in whatever form God takes, infinite intelligence, was on the other side of this light. It seemed to just overcome him at once, and he sat there and he wept. Now, I've seen a couple of people during these transition pictures break down and weep. Often it's relief that it's over. Often it's just a release of gripped tension that they must have held on to in life for years. In Fred Rogers' case, it seemed to be overwhelm. Sensory and emotional overwhelm. And he just cried. What got to him, I think, the most was the proximity he felt to the divine, to God, however he defined that. After all those years of study, here he was, this close to meeting the divine. He stood up. And he touched it. And I guess in touching it, it gave him the impression that this was going to be like flopping down on a stack of warm bath towels. Something that soft and comfortable. Because he just goes, okay. And he threw himself at this, what I always call a dome, but the surface of this light. But instead of bouncing on it or lying comfortably on the surface, he sank into it immediately, which he was not expecting. And this was the first sign of panic that I felt here. It was like a first-time swimmer just being thrown into a swimming pool. Sure, you'll float, you'll be fine. But you don't know that. You panic. What if I sink? What happens if I die? What happens if I drown? That's the emotion he had. And instead of just going into it, he turned around and tried to cling on to the last bit of space that still represented the mortal and the corporeal. But he couldn't. He continued to sink and disappeared into the light. And once again, I got that feeling. I think maybe because it was such a deliberate process in his case, and so slow, I got the sense that once he had passed through what I like to call the membrane, but whatever this thing is, once again, the individual consciousness splintered to become part of universal consciousness. And Mr. Rogers no longer existed. That was left out there. Where he went, he was part of the whole, part of the one, the spiritual and the eternal. And I'm sure he would have understood that and not been surprised by that, given the range of his studies over the years. And that was it. He was gone. To me, it felt slightly laborious. Like, oh, why are you taking so long? From his point of view, this was about absorbing every detail, enjoying every step. But the relief he felt, the joy he felt, the sense of wholeness he felt as he stood in front of what he saw as the doorway to heaven, it was an extraordinary passage of an extraordinary soul. It felt joyous, really joyous. Made me cry, that's for sure. So there you go. That's Fred Rogers. He's an example to us all. Alrighty. Thank you very, very much for watching. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you next time, guys.